Go ahead and reopen SaveForWeb.ai. We used this in the previous lesson. Let's get a little bit deeper into some of the ways that we can control an image if size is really a consideration. So let's start with this here, the palette. Now, if you're reopening Save for Web, you want to turn off the shadow, because the first two we're going to talk about are PNG8s and GIFs. They actually have the same option, so it's kind of economical. We can do both at the same time, but they don't like drop shadows, do they? Let's go ahead and go up to the word File and go down to Save for Web. Let's go ahead and position ourselves. Let me get that thing. Put it like this. We're in 2UP over here. Now, if you go into GIF and you go into PNG8, they're exactly the same features, so we can cover both at the same time. I would recommend PNG8 if you can get away with it, but it doesn't work with older browsers, around 4 or 5 or earlier. So it's a better format to work with. It makes the image smaller. GIF is being phased out eventually anyway. What do we got here? Well, number one, you have interlaced. Now, our base reading right here is 49.16K. Let me write that down so I don't forget that. 49.1, which is not too bad. If we turn on interlaced, it goes up by almost about 10 or 15%. It goes up to 57.52. What does interlaced do? Well, according to marketers and people that design on the web, it's a better way to load a GIF because it loads it in stages as opposed from the top down. But it does create a bigger file, so that's up to you, and it won't work with, again, earlier browsers. The colors we have right now are 256. Now, we can change from selective into things like, well, perceptual, adaptive. The best one to use if you're working with something other than selective is perceptual, because it's the perception of the colors, and it seems to work best with most graphics. So I'm going to put that back at selective because we can choose the colors over here. The maximum number of colors in PNG8 or GIF are 256, but I can change that to get a smaller file. Now remember, 49.16 is what we have now. If I cut that in half, you want to watch the image to see if it's going to change. And it really doesn't. It looks pretty good. We're down to what? Well, in this case, it's the same number, so we're not helping ourselves there. If we go all the way down, say, to 2, all right, it's only 2K, but you wouldn't want that. So what I usually do is I go down the scale until I see something that I think is going to work and it's not impacting the quality of the image. I'm at 64 now. Now, the last we did was 128. And yes, it definitely makes a difference. So I'm not going to go to 64. I'm willing to take the extra over here because I want the image to look as good as possible. You have a dithering process right over here. You've got none, diffusion, pattern, or noise. What does that do? Well, there are more colors probably in this image than can be displayed with the 256, or in our case, 128. What the diffusion pattern does is it puts colors that it has in combinations to help the eye see the colors and color memory see colors that aren't there. Kind of an interesting process, I'm sure, but diffusion helps you do that. Now, you can change to a different type of diffusion, pattern or noise, and see if that works better. This is usually the best. And we can choose how much diffusion we use over here. Now watch what happens to the image when I take that down to 0. You can see the difference. Now if I take that back up again, it does look better. Oh, incidentally, we're down to 38.89 if we use that. But if we take it back up, it does look somewhat better. But I think we can get away with about 50% on that. Again, I'm watching the image. Once I get it where I want, I move my eyes to the image and I let go. I want to see what it's going to look like. I can accept that. I'm down to 31. I'm happy. Transparency, we already talked about. You can change the transparency, turn it on or off, or come over here and choose a different color, or click here and specify a particular color. Up to you. Down here, we don't have any transparency. You can use diffusion or pattern or noise on the transparency. In other words, where it becomes transparent. Right now we have no transparency dither, so it's rather sharp on the edges. I like diffusion transparency dither. Now that actually reduces the file size by about 1K. I'm going to turn that one on. You can change the amount, and down here you have what's called web snap. Do you want to snap these colors only to web? Now watch what happens if I take it all the way down, or all the way up, I should say. I'm snapping to all those colors, and wow. I mean, that's an interesting look. It's not what I want. We're down to 12K. That's not going to work. Again, what I do is I'll start here at web snap 0. And then I'll say take it up about 10 or 15. Let go. See if I like it. Actually, that works. Let's go ahead a little bit higher. Let's go to 50. Again, once I get here, I move my eyes over to the item before I let go. Nah, that's starting to go. So I'm going to take that back down to about 25. 38.72K. Now we can change the size here, or the percentage. We can either go by size or percentage. We have an art optimized or type optimized. Art's probably the best. And we can clip to the artboard. Now what's that? Now if I turn that off, I get all three artboards in this one document. I don't want that. That's why I say clip to the artboard. If we like what we see, click Save, give it a name, put it somewhere where you want it to be. There you go. Let's go ahead and get out of here. Let's get out of here too. Let's go to our photograph and text. And let's go back up one more time. File, Save for Web. Let's go ahead and move that over. I want it at 100%, whether I can see the whole thing or not. Over here, now let's look at PNG24 and JPEG. Now the PNG24 is my best. I like it. You only have two options. Do you want transparency or not? And you want to interlace it. Now again, that makes it load in stages. A nice way to do it, but increases file size. We're at 488, which is really unacceptable for the internet. If I interlace it, we go up to 546. That's over half a meg. Wow. Let's not worry about PNG24 unless you got a lot of bandwidth or you're going out to PowerPoint. Let's go to JPEG. Now in JPEG, the default is at 60% quality. It's optimized, and we're at 107, which is still more than what I want. The optimized option, again, will not work on very old browsers, and it doesn't really save that much at all, about 2K out of 107. But if you can afford it, go ahead and do it. Over here is our quality. Now you've got the options over here, and you've got options by the number over here. If I change that, let's go all the way to 0. Again, watch the image. See a change? Got more blurred in these areas. The text is more indistinct. We're down to 23K though, but I don't like it. Now what I do here is I begin at 100, which is perfect, which is way too big. And I begin taking it down, say about 20 or 30 at a time. Where I've found for photographs, the best place to kind of be most of the time is around 30%. So if I take this to 30%, again, you want to watch the image over there. Slight change, but we're down to 52K out of 2.05 million. That's not too bad. 30 is kind of my go-to number when I'm working with graphics, if they're going out to the internet. PowerPoint, no, that's not a problem. I go PNG24. Now you have a progressive option right here. You'll notice that does lower it even more. It helps the image compress and load faster, but again, it's not supported by all browsers. Why would I blur an image? Joint Photographer Expert Group JPEG images work best with areas that are shadowed. If you have more sharp areas in the image, well, it's harder for it to compress it. I'm not suggesting you do this, but watch what happens to that number when I introduce blur. We're down to 27. That's about half, but I wouldn't use that. There are times where you might be able to get away with a little bit of blur, but in most cases, you're probably not going to use it. Do you want to insert the ICC profile, which increases by about 6K? Not a whole lot, but that is about 8% or so. What does that do? Well, it helps the image on the other side look more like the colors that you imagine because you're using the International Color Consortium profile. Most browsers today do support that. If you want to change the color from white on the mat, you can. Down here, we can change the image size. If we are working with art and text, I would default toward art optimized, not type. You'll get a better image. And that's about it. You like it? You can click Done. In other words, you can actually finish the job out, come back later, your settings are still there. Let's say we like what we did right here. You can click this button right here, and you can go into Save Settings and have it as one of your default presets. But there is one other option up here. Optimize to file size. Go ahead and click this. Now, optimize to file size. You decide a size you want. It will do what it needs to get there. You say, well, I want something around 20K. Now, your choices are the current settings, in other words, JPEG, or can it use a JPEG or a GIF? Now, I want a JPEG here, and we're only working with one slice. We're not slicing in this particular lesson, obviously. That's for the web. And click OK. Now, if you noticed, it did change. And if you look at the original, we don't have the quality. but we do have the number we want. It's down to 21 down here. That's as low as it could get it, or close as it could get it. So we can even use that number if we want. Now the last thing is you do have a preview here. Now if I click that, it will preview open up in Safari. And I can actually see what it would look like in Safari on that page. If I get out of there and click the globe right over here, I can edit the list and add other browsers. Maybe I want to use Explorer. I've got all the control I want to. You like it again? Click Save and save it. You want to save these settings and come back later, click Done. It will take you back to Illustrator. PNG8s and GIFs, JPEGs, and PNG24s. They're all in Save for Web. Each one has their own particular function.